So lots of noise out here about the Colts trading up right now, and I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure exactly how I feel about it, because one, I'm not sure how likely it is to happen, and then number two, I'm not sure if I want it to happen, primarily because I'm not sure if the Indianapolis Colts have the depth to be giving up any of this year's picks to move up. Now, next year's pick, sure, you could probably convince me that trading up and giving up a second rounder next year is a fine idea. But as of right now, this team has needs at safety, at corner, as well as plenty of room for a nice shiny new toy on the outside, on the other side of Michael Pittman Jr., let alone depth that we need kind of across the board, all things considered. So to not have, let's say, the 46 overall pick in this draft is kind of tough to figure how you would possibly address all of those needs. Now, of course, that's how I felt and kind of how I still feel to some degree, but that was prior to DeForest Buckner restructuring his contract, which has left a little bit more room for the Indianapolis Colts to make some post-draft signings. We are kind of at that point currently where anyone that is going to be signing, any of those impact players, are not going to be signed until after the draft anyway. So you can't just help but figure that Chris Ballard plans to be a little more proactive once that time comes. At the very minimum, it puts the Colts in a position where our cap situation is comparable to the rest of the AFC South. And I think a lot of people, maybe you included, didn't quite realize exactly how little cap space the Colts had left before that restructured contract going into this draft. I believe effective cap space was $8 million, which was less than half of any other team in the AFC South coming up to this point. Regardless, if nothing else, it makes things a little bit more difficult to predict moving forward. Now that they have a little bit of extra money that seems to be intentionally cleared up for this offseason. But one thing is for certain about what we can expect on draft day, if you ask me, and it's that the Colts should not and will not trade up for Brock Bowers specifically. Last year, you had a guy like Will Levis that was considered to be the smokescreen, or was really a lot of people, not just a smokescreen at the time. A lot of people thought that he would be going to the Colts at number 4, and that was that piece of news, that inside information that everyone thought they had that turned out to be false. Make no mistake, this year, Brock Bowers is Will Levis, and I'm going to explain why I feel that today. But before I do, you know what it is? I got to introduce myself. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, I ask anyone enjoying, go ahead, shoot a like. Going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. If you're listening to audio version, 5 stars would be great. 1 star would be terrible. If you're not enjoying it, just get the hell out of here. There's no need to make it anything more than that, right? If you're not enjoying, just move on with your day. We want to get to 3,000 subscribers by the season over here on the YouTube channel. We just passed up 2,300. We're on our way to 24. Today may be the day. If you keep coming back, enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button so you're always notified whenever we drop. But most importantly, let's enjoy the episode. The draft is so close. I could not be any more excited. We're talking, a week from today, if I'm not mistaken, right? I'm releasing this on Thursday night. I don't know when it is that you're watching, but a week from today, we're talking about the first round, and this video will have either aged very, very well or very, very bad. So let's get on into it. And I just want to start with Brock Bowers as a prospect because I don't want anyone to get the impression that I don't think Brock Bowers can play, right? Like, I have eyes, okay? Like, I'm watching the same thing all you guys are watching. That's a real good tight end prospect right there. And when I watch him, I see a guy that has soft hands for the position, that's used to being the primary target, that does move pretty well for a big guy. He ran a 4.53 at his pro day. Quite frankly, that is quite a bit faster than I would have expected based off of what I saw on tape. But nonetheless, I saw a guy that moved quite well. But at the same time, when you talk about a Brock Bowers, and I think this is maybe the disconnect between me and some other people, I don't exactly see something in him that I have never seen before at the position or even in recent years at the draft. Like, for those of you that say that Brock Bowers is a generational tight end prospect, let me just say this. If I had $1 for every time that I heard about a generational tight end prospect in a given year, I guess that's a weird way I wouldn't be rich, right? But I would be able to hit up the McDonald's drive-thru and come out of it quite all right. I don't view him as a better prospect than guys like O.J. Howard, Eric Ebron, certainly not T.J. Hawkinson. Tyler Eifert, Jermaine Gresham, David Njoku, even a Kyle Pitts, albeit he was kind of closer to a wide receiver than a tight end as a prospect. And I think that's what really made people fall in love with him, was that he really didn't even look much like a tight end, but he was playing the position. Those are all guys that were called generational talents going into the draft. Not just good, not just damn good. These were, the word generational was being said about all of the guys that I just mentioned, right? We throw that word around quite loosely when it comes to the NFL draft. Now, that's not to say that none of those guys could play, but in hindsight, if I were to ask you, is a single one of those guys, were they worth a top 10 pick in the NFL draft? Your answer, almost unequivocally, would have been no. Of course, a great tight end is a true mismatch nightmare. I mean, having a great tight end in this league is perhaps the greatest advantage an offense could have in terms of a weapon. I mean, it's the true hybrid between the wide receiver and the lineman, arguably some of the greatest athletes on planet Earth. Like, if a tight end, a guy who has that type of build, growing up decided he wanted to be a UFC heavyweight instead of a football player, he would probably have been a UFC champion if he had put his efforts into that realm, right? So these guys are some of the best athletes on the field. But real quickly, to kind of bring the point home a little bit more, I'm going to give you a second. Think about the greatest tight ends that you have ever seen in your life. The greatest tight ends of all time. I'll give you a moment. 3, 2, 1. All right, I have all the names that you were thinking of right here. And outside of Tony Gonzalez at 13th overall and Kellen Winslow at 13th overall in the year 1979, which practically disqualifies him from the discussion, you don't have any guys being drafted up there where we're looking about trading up for a Brock Bowers, right? Rob Gronkowski, 2nd rounder. Travis Kelce, 3rd rounder. Shannon Sharp, 7th rounder. Antonio Gates, undrafted. Now, I do know there are good tight ends that have been 1st rounders, right? You have a guy like Dalton Kincaid right now on the Bills. In my opinion, he looks to be something very special. Very much reminds me of a Travis Kelce out there on the field, and he only got better as the season went on. Vernon Davis, that was a 1st-round pick. Dallas fucking Clark, right? So I get you, all right? Don't feel like you have to provide me with the examples of these tight ends, right? I got you. I do my research, okay? All I'm saying is that to trade up in this draft for what is about as unsure of a day one impact player as you can get when the team has clear and obvious needs, right? Like tight end would be a luxury pick. Like you have everything else settled. You're just drafting a tight end for like a cherry on top of the sundae. Trading up for this guy would be risky at best and flat out silly, reckless, and dumb at worst. Now, I don't know why it is, but for whatever reason, tight end prospects are just hard to nail down, right? I don't know for sure why that is. I could take my guess in terms of, how they're going to translate to the league. My guess would be that when you have a great tight end prospect, right, and he is a very talented guy, they're almost always going to look real good on tape, right? Because in college, that guy, as I said before, these are some of the greatest athletes on the field. He's a man amongst boys, a great tight end prospect. And in the league, he becomes a man amongst men. And I do feel that on some levels, it can be hard to gauge exactly how physical a guy is going to be at the tight end position coming in the league just by watching his tape in college, right? As opposed to him, again, just being a man amongst boys at that level. And, it's just a huge leap to make. Now, I, of course, don't know that from direct experience. Spoiler alert, I never played in the league, just in case you guys thought I was on your favorite team or something like that at some point. I was not, but I know there was a gap between myself and the best players on my damn varsity team, okay? And all of them had zero chance of playing high-level D1 football. So from college to the NFL has to be something serious, has to be something intimidating. And in Brock Bowers' case specifically, when I watch him on tape, the physicality is my biggest concern in college, right? I'm talking about just on tape in college, right? And that can't be said about all the guys that I listed before, right? I don't see a guy that's really trying to lay down the lumber as a run blocker out there, a guy that's going to impose fear into the opposing defense when he has the ball in his hands. And I also don't see a guy that is as fluid of a receiver as a guy like a Dalton Kincaid, as a prospect like a Kyle Pitts, right? Which kind of puts me in a spot where, quite frankly, not only do I not want the Colts to trade up for Brock Bowers, if I was GM, I would potentially be passing on him at number 15, depending on who's there in the spot that we're in. So I can tell you with relative certainty that if I feel this way, you can be damn sure that the Colts, if they trade up, will not be doing it to draft Brock Bowers. I can, on the other hand, see them trading up for any of the top 3 receivers in this draft, including Marvin Harrison Jr., and then, of course, Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze. But I am certainly not sitting here expecting it, hoping for it, holding them to the standard that if they don't do it, they made the wrong move. Nor will I be losing any sleep if it does not happen. I would far prefer, actually, if you're to ask me personally, a trade up into the back end of the first round to get a guy like Adonai Mitchell. In fact, that is my dream scenario. I'm not convinced that Adonai Mitchell doesn't end up one of the top 3 receivers in this draft, period. Kind of reminds me of an A.J. Green, but perhaps a little more on the speed side and a little bit less on the, on the physical freak of nature side. But at the same time, 9.99 RAS score, 6'4", 205 pounds. Now, maybe in a couple years, he gets up to 210, 215. I mean, that is as strong as you're going to get at wide receiver. What a beautiful balance that is of physicality and, lean, sleek, able to move really, really fast. I mean, the guy is a special, special talent. Not the point. That's my dream scenario. That's what I'm saying to you. You take a guy in the secondary at number 15 and then trade up for Adonai Mitchell in the back end of the first round, leap right up past the Buffalo Bills and get him on your squad. It would all, that would leave you in a spot, in my opinion, that is a significantly more advantageous spot going into the season than a trade up for a Brock Bowers. But again, just a final note for clarity right here. I do think that the Colts may trade up. It's not that I'm eliminating this possibility entirely, but if they did, it would all but eliminate them from getting an impact player in the secondary during this draft, or at least one that you could count on day one, right? It's hard to know in the 5th, 6th, whatever round that it's going to be. You don't know if you're going to end up with a Tariq Woolen, right? It's normally not how that works. We do have a few guys in our secondary right now that were later picks, in Kenny Moore, Jalen Jones, Julian Blackmon. All of them can play. All of them very solid players. But if we do trade up, my point is that you can expect and assume that money was to address the secondary after the draft. So we'll see. But on draft day, if you're looking and the Colts trade up and they go ahead and draft a Neighbors, draft an Odunze, someone like that, you can be sure that the Colts will be taking some of that money and putting it towards the secondary after the draft. All these guys, Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs, Stephon Gilmore, Cameron Sutton. I mean, I'm just going off the top of my head. I don't even have a list up. Let me bring the list up real quick, though, just so we get the idea, right? Let's see. Patrick Peterson, he's kind of cooked, but also like, hey, that would work. Justin Bethel is all right. Xavier Howard still out there. J.C. Jackson, maybe not what people thought he was, but still can come out maybe with a little bit of expectation, play all right. Adoree Jackson, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I'm not saying these are all my favorite options. My point is that the list of guys is endless. Kareem Jackson, Marcus May, Micah Hyde, right? There's a lot of guys for the Colts to go get after this draft, and I think kind of looking at the way they freed up that space, it's really going to be one of two things, right? You're going to trade up and get a weapon and address the secondary after the fact, or you're going to stay put and then, I don't know, potentially try to make a trade for, I don't know, a guy on a contract year. I mean, T. Higgins is a guy that, we expect him to play for the Bengals this year. That kind of almost feels like something that's going to sort itself out. But who knows? Maybe the Colts are in the market to make a trade like that. I mean, the A.J. Brown trade to the Philadelphia Eagles, that was a shocking trade on draft day, right? There was really no one that was 100% sure that was going to happen. So you never know. The draft is a crazy, crazy time. There could be scenarios that we're not considering right now off the top of our head, maybe for a trade for a position of need for the Indianapolis Colts. But what won't be happening is that the Colts will be getting Brock Bowers. You can take that to the bank. And that's all I got for today. But until next time, my name is Justin. This right here was the Ride on the Bench Colts podcast. Like, comment, let me know what you think. All that stuff. Subscribe if you have not yet and you keep coming back. But most importantly, as always, go Colts.